Okay, welcome everybody to today's event. I'm Jason Gumpert from msdynamicsworld.com, and we're here for a session all about extensions for Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. We have a team of presenters here from SAGlobal. It's great to have them with us. And as we begin, please do know that this session will take up probably the full hour. We do welcome your questions, but if we don't get to them during the session, our presentation team here will get them and see them and be able to respond. So feel free to enter anything you have. As the session goes on, look for the Q&A block to the right of the main presentation area. So without any further delay, I'm going to hand things off to Jen Wisemore to get us started.
Thanks, Jason. I'll do just a few quick intros to SAGlobal and our team for today's presentation. SAGlobal is an award-winning Dynamics partner delivering solutions across the globe. We specialize in end-to-end services such as net new implementations, upgrades, BI and analytics, and specialized development services to partners, ISVs, and end customers. Today's presenters have deep experience in all facets of Dynamics. Joel directs our product management and has been a Microsoft MVP for over 5 years. Parameter manages our business line offering services to partners and ISVs and has worked with Dynamics for almost 20 years. And Syed is one of our top senior technical resources who has directed most of our upgrade and extension projects. Okay, so for today's agenda, we'll do a short overview to give some context to the problem of overlaid code, and then we'll jump right into the code scenarios and take you through those. Over to you, Joel.
Thanks, Jen. So Microsoft has announced last year that as of this spring 2018 release, all of the packages that they have are going to be locked for overlayering. So it's important now more than ever to make sure that you're making the proper investments and redesigning your solutions. So it's 100% extended and 100% in packages that you manage. It's also important if there are areas of the application that you currently cannot extend but would like to achieve a specific functionality, that feedback is getting back to Microsoft so they can add those extension points to their code or possibly modify the platform in certain ways to enable your scenarios to be lit up. So very important to be thinking about that so that you're not stuck on older versions of Dynamics. That can happen both from a perspective of upgrading from 2012 to Dynamics 365, or if you're on prior versions of Dynamics 365, it's possible to get stuck on those versions if you still have overlayering. So that's why this extension story is so important to being able to remain current on the application. If you are upgrading, our recommended approach is to try to take this in chunks, especially if you're upgrading from AX 2012. So we always try to get the code to just compile best we can right away, usually by commenting out errors or any issues that we have and just kind of getting some base code to compile. It is actually possible in a development environment to take off the overlayering restrictions just so you can get your code to compile while you work towards the extension story. Once you have your code compiled, then we like to focus on things one feature at a time and try to get a specific feature fully extended and into our own packages. We feel like it helps with the overall cycle of development and testing and releasing to have that focus be on one feature at a time instead of just trying to refactor everything at one time. It's a little bit simpler to focus on one feature at a time, and we find it overall the process goes faster. If you do have any design points that you can't solve with extensions, of course it's important to document those in Visual Studio so that you can come back to them later. So any extension point. Maybe you did a workaround in your code because you couldn't do it exactly the way you wanted to do it. So you can document those things and come back to them later. As Microsoft makes more investments, it's possible you can come back to those issues and do it the way you wanted to. And then it's also important to give Microsoft the feedback. So if you have extensibility requests or design issues with the system, getting that to Microsoft so they have a chance to update their code over time. From a kind of a cadence perspective, Microsoft they don't have an exact cadence yet. In general, they talk about the spring and fall release cycle. What we try to do is prior to that release cycle, there's some refactoring that you can do because maybe Microsoft has updated the platform, for example, and has new extensibility features available. Or sometimes they also do application beta code drops where we can start testing our extensibility logic on their beta code. So if we're doing that refactoring work ahead of time, we'll kind of branch the code in Visual Studio into a beta release branch and try to be working on our refactoring before the Microsoft releases the generally available code. Then of course there's a series of tasks after the release to merge in any refactored code, resolve errors that you might have had, and of course go through the normal testing and deployment cycles. If you're an ISV, then this is also a logical time to also be updating the app source listing and updating your LCS assets to the latest release. And then finally, again, it's key as part of this process if you have updates or new extendability requests as part of your development cycle, making sure those get back to Microsoft so that they can ultimately put them back into their code. So just some final thoughts. I mean, I think overall this, all the packages being locked both from Microsoft and ISVs is a positive thing. There's obviously some work to do in the medium term to fully realize this story. But long term, it's going to make our lives easier in terms of deploying hotfixes and deploying hotfix rollups really to our customers if you're ISV or Microsoft. And so that story being made easier is probably worth going through this effort in the meantime to realize this extension story. So with that, I'll turn it back to Paramesh.
All right, thank you so much, Joel. I did have one more slide before we go deep dive into the code, just to talk a little bit about our experience. So as you begin your journey from moving away from overlayering to extensions, there are certain considerations you take, and we recommend you achieve this through multiple iterations like Joel recommended. Based on our experience, we find that you can categorize the overall effort in 5 different sections. First, thoroughly understanding the extension framework and some of its limitations is important. This knowledge would become essential as you start thinking about some of the redesign considerations that you may have to take due to limitations. Once you understand the capabilities, you can then begin first by creating a new package solution and moving all of the metadata objects that were overlaid by creating extensions for them. So for instance, create table extensions, add your custom fields, create form extensions, update your form controls, and update the properties and so on. You can then continue the analysis of all of your overlaid code and look to document scenarios that might need a redesign due to limitations. You may have to put additional effort to consider some of those design modifications. Finally, during your analysis, as you fine-comb the changes, you will come across items that need extensibility endpoints that Microsoft can help with. For instance, requesting for inline delegates or enum requests or exposing class members. Our recommendation is to report these issues as soon as you identify them, so it's included in future updates from Microsoft. Also, we recommend you check on the Dynamics 365 roadmap site as Microsoft continues to provide additional support for extensions. For instance, there is upcoming support for field group extensions associated with display methods and support for adding a field to a table relation in the table extensions. Please also check on the extensively homepage for the latest information in terms of how you can log these extensively requests with Microsoft, as the process has slightly changed recently. All right, moving on to the code deep dive. What we have here is two different environments. Environment 70 is an environment that has all of the overlayering, and another environment is the 72 environment, which has all of the overlaying fully extended in a separate package. So we will be toggling between these two environments to show you the before and after code changes that we have done to get you to a fully extended model. And in terms of the scenarios, we've kind of gone through our experience over the last 2 years and kind of identified what are the key scenarios that we feel needs to be put out there for you and can add value for your in your journey as well. So I'll be doing some of the scenarios and then I hand it off to Syed to continue the other scenarios. All right, in scenario 1, we look at one of the common scenarios. The requirement here is based on a standard parameter. We want to show or display a custom control on a particular form. In our example, we have a custom control on the customer table form. So basically, enable or disable a custom control based on a standard parameter. Here, the solution is simple. You can create a post event handler if it is a public method. And in our scenario, there are two parameters, the entire form and the on-initialized event. Let me move to the application real quick and go to the customer's form. So the control that we are talking about is the custom credit notes button. And this is a custom control called the SAGlobal credit. And we want to be able to show or hide this control based on a certain parameter, which is available in the call center parameters tab under the holds tab. So there's a standard control called the fraud check, and this is the MCR order parameters fraud check control. So let's look at the code for this. To my right, I have all of the code base, which is got all of the overlaying, and the first scenario we're talking about is on the customer form. Let's look at the changes that we have on the customer form. And search for our changes. So here we've added an additional condition based on the MCR fraud check button. If it is marked, then we want to be able to set the visible property to true for the SAGlobal credit control. Else, we want to hide this property. So that's clearly overlaying. And what we want to do now is try to get rid of this change. And for that, let's go ahead and create, search for the on initialized event and copy the event handler, and let's create a class. Called the SAGlobal form event handler. And paste your event handler, and now you can go about writing your custom condition. In this case, we want to create a form run object as a sender, and through the form run we'll access the design property, control name, in our case it is the SAGlobal credit control, and mark the visible property to based on the MCR order parameter. There you go. So we're doing the same thing, but in an event handler here. So we have the same condition to be able to enable or disable the standard control, I mean the custom control based on the visible property. All right. So now every time the form is open, this event handler will handle the visible property based on the parameter that is set. Moving on to the second scenario. The second scenario is slightly a variation, but again a common scenario we have seen. The requirement is an additional validation to the standard validate field method and setting the return value to the custom validation result. The solution here is to create a post-event handler if it is public method. You add the custom validation and then set the return value in your custom code. Let's go back to the code. The changes are in the proj table. On the validate field. So here we've added an additional case to check if the worker responsible is within the current company. Then we are setting the return value here. And again, you can move this code using the on validate a field event. You can copy the event handler and similarly create a class. In this case, I've already created a class here. And move your custom statement into that class and setting the return value based on the worker responsible to check if the worker is in the current company. Now this removes the overlaying code, and you can go back and into the pros table and then delete all of the changes that you have here, which is pretty much getting rid of the overlaying code. Scenario 3, in this third scenario, we have a requirement to modify standard control functionality on the clicked event. In this example, the standard button is the hold button on the customer's form, and the clicked event of that hold button will validate a certain condition based on a custom parameter which we have set. In this scenario, the allow credit check parameter in the credit rating form is the form that we are talking about. So the solution here, you cannot use events. There is only on clicked event available, and we need to restrict the standard code. So to support this scenario, we have created a form extension on the CoC table, and then we've hidden the standard control and added a custom control, created a form event handler for the new button clicked event, and added all of the additional code changes for the custom check. So in the application, back to the all customers. So the control we're talking about is the hold control. This is a standard form on the customer page, and again, we have a certain parameter in the accounts receivables parameter form under the credit rating. So we have allow check credit Now this is a custom control called the SAG credit check. So if this is turned on, then a certain validation needs to be triggered. Let's move to the code. So this is the additional line of code that we've added on the control collect event. And based on this condition, we are then continuing the additional validation from standard. So to get rid of this overlayering, let me switch to the 72 environment, which has the code modifications done. So we first created a form extension for the customer table. Let's see the changes that we have here. So the first thing is we've set the visible property to the standard control to no, and then we've created another button called the SAGlobal NCR button hold, and we've added all of the modifications on an event handler, a form event handler. So let me open the code here. We've created a class, the additional check that we added in the previous form that you saw. We've moved that to the class. And on the form event handler of the CoC table, we've on clicked event, we've moved the validation here. So the same condition and the rest of the standard code is moved in here as well. Now, if you're taking this approach, you must also ensure that any other code references within the standard button is moved to the new control and the corresponding event handlers are created. And that's what we've done in this solution. We've moved all of the references into our custom package solution. All right, scenario 4, we will review some of the options you have when adding additional switch cases in standard switch statements. Typically, we've seen 3 common scenarios. The first one is when you have to add an additional case for a switch statement that does not have a throw error statement. In this case, it's pretty straightforward. You will add a post event handler and then add your custom code in that. So back to this empty environment. Going to the journal static class, I'll search for the code changes that we have. So here we have an additional case statement. In this case, we want to return the form name that is associated to the RHRM order table, and that's the additional condition that we have. And we've moved that to the post event handler. It's the same piece of switch statement that we've moved and added the case statement here. For the same journal map, we're returning the order table, the form name that is associated to the RHRM order table. Another scenario is when you have to add a case statement which has a throw statement in it. Since there is a throw statement, we cannot add a pre or a post event handler. The solution is here to create your own inline delegate temporarily and subscribe to it. So going back to this empty environment, the changes are in the purge edit lines form. So again, we need an additional case statement based on a new enum type that we've added called SAGlobal to the document status enum. And since there is a throw statement, you cannot add a pre or a post event handler. For that, let's move to the 72 environment. So we've added a default just before the throw statement and also a delegate signature in this. And we'll be subscribing to this delegate in our custom package. So we moved the switch statement here, and we are subscribing to the SAG construct perch edit lines delegate that we created. Now, this is still overlayering, but you can report this to Microsoft and request for an inline delegate. And when Microsoft provides you with an inline delegate, then you can get rid of this changes that you have on the perch edit lines form. Now, the third scenario is when you have an additional case to a switch statement that has a throw statement and an inline delegate is provided by Microsoft. When you have a delegate from Microsoft, you can just simply subscribe to it. So going back to the journal table here. So there's an inline delegate here, and what we're doing is simply subscribing to this, and we will get rid of the overlayering changes that we have here. Let me see if I can find the changes. Yeah, there you go. So basically subscribe to the delegate and add your case statement and with the same condition that you had previously overlaid. So that kind of summarizes the common scenarios that I wanted to speak about today, and I'll hand over the session to Asad now to talk a little bit more about the other scenarios.
Thank you, Pamesh. Can you make me the presenter?
Sure.
Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so let's cover some more scenarios apart from what Pamesh shown just a few seconds before. So the first scenario what I'm going to cover, which is scenario 5 for us, is the Runbase extension. It's again a kind of common scenario wherein we have the standard Runbase classes, wherein we want to add custom logic, like including an additional parameter within the dialog, and based on the parameter we want to run the custom logic. So if we have this kind of customization and then standard existing Runbase class, so let me show you how we can move these changes using the extension framework. So for this, the example what I have taken is inventory closing. This is a standard Runbase class. So if you go to the inventory management and closing and adjustment, so we have so close inventory option to close the inventory. So this is how the standard Runbase batch class is seen. So what we have done is we have added an additional parameter. So let me go to another environment where we have added that additional parameter using the customization. So that's on 170 environment. So if I go to the same form in this environment from inventory management, closing and adjustment. So if I click on inventory, close inventory, so you can see here at the end we have added a custom field, so that based on that we execute the custom logic. So to have this field here and to have the supported logic, let me show you what we have done with overlayering. So this is the same class, inventory closing. I have opened in a comparison compare window. So this is the new field, I mean the dialog field what we have added. And apart from that, we have to add that field into the macro in case if I want to serialize the this value using pack and unpack. So we have added that custom field into this existing standard macro. So if you go to the next change, so we have this field being used in all the base methods, like this is dialog, wherein we're adding the field at the end. And if I go to the next change, this is the change wherein we are fetching the value back from the dialog once user mark and unmark our option. So when they click OK, so this is where we are fetching the value back. Again, this is directly an overlayering change within the standard class. At the end of this, this is initial. If you want to initialize the value in a default method, setting it to true. And there is a PAM method which we have added to capture our value once we select, so that we can use it in other places. And the final change is this is on the run method. Once the standard code executes, so we have put our own custom logic here, wherein if our parameter is marked, so we'll execute the custom code here. So we can put our own custom code here. So this is the overlayering what we have. So let me switch to another environment, 172 environment. So wherein we have already moved these overlayering changes using extension. Okay. So the first thing what we have to do is create a class extension. This is how you can use the extension of attribute to create a class extension to standard classes. You can in fact use the same thing for tables and forms as well. And you can see I have created a static variable to hold the table instance. And then you can see this is the macro, which is the standard. The name is same as the standard macro current list. So inside this we have added the custom update custom field. And apart from that, we have created new methods for each of the standard base methods, like dialog, get from dialog, pack and unpack. The one best practice what you have to follow is you have to use your own prefix. In this case, we have given as SAG. The reason being, in case if more than one ISV, many instances, if more than one ISV code if we have, and if more than one ISV is extending this logic, then there should not be any conflict with the names. So this is the best practice you should follow. Prefix your methods with your own whatever the prefix you are following for other naming convention. And here, whatever code was there in the standard dialog method with overlayering, so I have copied that code here. And the same thing with SAG get from dialog. I have similar methods for pack and unpack. We are just creating a new methods and moving them into, what are the changes we had in standard overlay code, we are moving into our own methods. So if you scroll down further, you can see again, this is one of the changes what we had. Whenever the init form default executes, we want to set it to true. And this is a custom method. At the end of the run, I want to execute this method if my parameter is marked within the dialog. So here are the events for each of the standard base methods where dialog get from dialog. So we are subscribing the post event handler, and then we are just calling our new methods what we have defined in this extension class. So apart from this, the one difference what you can see is in the pack and unpack method, which basically helps you serialize the information captured from the dialog so that you can maintain the state of that selection when I open the dialog form again. So the difference here is the pack extension option, and this is a new method which is being provided by Microsoft from update 5 onwards, so which was not there before. So wherein you can call from the current instance, so you can call the pack extension and specify the class name, args, and our new method for packing. So if you scroll down further, we are doing the exact same thing for unpacking. We have a new method, unpack extension. That's again on the post event handler of unpack method. And at the end of this, on the run method, so once this is again post event handler. So once the standard code is executed, so what we are doing is we're checking for the instance, and then we are calling our own method. So there, if the parameter is marked, so we continue executing our logic. So with this change, if I go to the instance, in the application, so go to the inventory management, closing and adjustment. You can see the same exact same field you can see with the extension. So in this environment there are no overlayering. So whatever field you are seeing here is coming out of extension changes. Okay, so that is one common scenario which you can use to extend the Runbase process without any overlayering. Okay. So next scenario, what I have captured here is register events. I mean, you might have aware of some of the events like jump ref and validate and modified at the control and the data source level. For this demonstration, I have taken jump ref as an example. So in case if you have a field on the form which is linking it to any other master form, but there is no, because we don't have any proper relationship at the table level, so due to which we are not getting a navigation option. I mean, there is no link available from where I can redirect from the current form to the respective master form. So if you have such changes, I mean, you have to directly overlay, override the jump ref method at the data source level. If you have that field being used in more than one place in the form, or if you are directly overridden this jump ref method at the control level, so you can do that with overlayering. So if you have such changes on your standard form to achieve this navigation, so how we can do that? So let me just walk you through with an example. So for this, the form what I have taken, I'll show you in a standard application. I mean, where we don't have any validations. I mean, we don't have any changes being done with respect to this jump ref. So if I go to accounts receivable and all sales orders, I'll pick one of the existing sales order. So if you go to the add products, this is basically this form is a retail add items, and here you can see we have available products. So wherein these are all my product number, but I don't have a link for this in case if I want to go and see the details with respect to this product, and there's no way which I can do. I have to either open one more tab and then search for that product, and you can see the details there. So the customization what we have done is providing a link here similar to what we have seen. You can see here at the right side. So if I want to see the details from here, I can directly click and navigate to the respective master, that is release product. So if I switch to the overlaid environment on 170, let me show you the change directly in application first, and then we get inside the code. So select all sales order, and again choose, I'll select the existing sales order. So once it loads, so we can see again on the add products. So you can see here, I mean, we have the link which was not there in a other environment, standard environment. So let's get into the application and see what are the changes we have done to get that change. Before that, I'll close the currently open object. Now, if I go to the retail add items form, let's see what customizations we have. So as I mentioned, we have overridden the jump ref method here, that is at the data source level. Display product number is the field, and this is jump ref method. On that we have put our own logic. So it gives you the link, and when you click on that, it will redirect you to the eCorex product detail extended, that is your release product. So let me move to the environment. If I have to move this overlayering change to extension, so let me show you how we can do that. First, in this environment, I'll show you the code, and then I'll take you to the application, and I'll show you how it looks in the application. Okay, so for this, what we have done is we have created a new class, SAGlobal retail add items event handler, and there's one construct method just to get an instance. So without that also you can do, but we have added here. And the next thing is on the initialize event. So on the form data source initialize, this is the form and this is the data source equals product. That's where we have that field. So we are registering that event. I mean, if you see the register override method, and for that form data object jump ref, we are giving an alternate what is the method whenever for that if we had to register the jump ref method. So in this class, we have created a new method, product num display jump ref, and this is the instance of the class. So what it is doing is at runtime when the form loads, it will just register the jump ref event, so that when we open the form, it behaves exactly the same as how when you add a jump ref directly at the data source or the control level, it works exactly the same way. And in this new method, the one which I have specified here, I have put the code which was there in the jump ref method on the overlayering environment. This is the exact same code, wherein we are passing taking the control, and then we are taking the current record which is being selected and redirected to the master form, I mean the release product form. So now if I go to the application here on this environment, so all sales orders, okay. So we can click on the sales order here. So when I go to the add products, you can see the link here, which is coming out of the extension code, which is done using this register override option. So you can do the exact same thing if you have the validate method or modified method at the data source field level or the form design control level. So you can follow the exact same approach to have the changes which you are doing correctly with overlayering. Okay, so let me move back to the slides. The next change what I want to cover here is the CoC, using the CoC. The scenario what we have taken here is we have some overlayering changes and standard class. Apart from that, we have also added an additional parameter within the standard method, which is kind of an intrusive change, which we should avoid. So I'll go through the code and then we'll get into the limitations of CoC and other details. Let me show you the overlayering code. Close this. So in this example, we have taken the markup class. If I compare the object, so you can see here, this is the custom parameter which we have added to an existing method, which is calc method within the markup class. And if I see the next change in this, so based on the traditional parameter, what we have added, so we are executing certain code here. What we're doing is if the markup, the parameter is set, and the category is percent or it's a unit, then continue. If it is not there, the other way around. So if it is not set, then this is a different scenario. This is basically the requirement what we have. Now if you see this, the code what we are seeing here is in the middle of a standard method, which you cannot do using either pre or post event handler, and that too again this is in inside a while loop. So whenever you come across such scenarios, so you have to see the existing code, how you can move these changes by making use of the existing code. So when you look through this code, we see the skip markup calculation method, which is basically doing a somewhat similar thing. So if you go to the method, so you can see here at the moment this method is directly returning skip markup trans calculation, which is a protected method. But for us, since it's protected, I should be able to do using the CoC. I should be able to extend the functionality of this method. So if I move to the other environment, where we have moved all these changes using CoC, let me go to the class. As I said previously, I mean, we have again created an extension clause for the markup. Then here we have added the public variable, and then there is a form method which you can set from the place we are calling the calc method. So just before calling the calc method, so you can set this value, and then when the calc method is being called, we have this skip markup trans calculation method, which we just saw within the standard markup trans class. So this is basically a CoC. For CoC, you should use next keyword. So here, what it does is, so whenever it hits, if there are more than one ways we are using this class extension, I mean, we are extending this method. So it will go through all the methods. If last, if there are no further methods to go to, it gets into the standard method, and from standard it just returns. It executes the standard code, and it comes out of the standard method. So once the standard method is executed, and we have added our own code here, which is exactly same as what it was there with overlayering. I'm checking for the markup type, and then I'm because I'm getting the markup trans, so I can just check the markup category, and if it is criteria is matching, then we are setting the return value, and that return value is returned back to the standard calc method, and based on that, the rest of the code will execute. Either it will execute or it will skip and continue with the next loop. So there are a few things. I mean, whenever you are writing a CoC, the first mandatory requirement is your signature should exactly match with what you have with the standard class. And if there are any default parameters, you cannot include the default parameters within your CoC method. So apart from that, there are few more limitations we have, which we have listed here. I mean, if you are using CoC, you must call next. Your next cannot be inside any of the conditions, and you cannot directly return prefix a return statement for the next. And also, if any of your method which is marked as final, then you cannot do the CoC for them. Also, there are certain codes from kernel level code, or if any of the method is a private method, so you cannot do CoC for those objects. Apart from that, if the method is a public method or a protected method, so you should be able to use CoC. CoC is one very important option which you can use to move most of the overlayering code. Okay, so the next scenario what I have taken is a level 5 extension. This scenario come into picture. For instance, you are an ISV, and your ISV has a base code, and on top of ISV you might have some add-on changes which may be on the hardware. Those add-on changes could be something like localization changes. So now whenever your add-on package is installed, so you want to override some of the labels which are there on the ISV package. So that override should happen only when you install the add-on. Otherwise, whatever is there in the ISV package, so you should be seeing them on the application. So for this, we can do in a different way. Like you can extend the ISV object in my add-on package and then change the label directly. But that's not the right approach, because you are just, for just changing the label, you are extending the object. You're creating a form extension or menu extension, or it could be a table extension, and then you are changing the labels. So rather than doing that, we can follow a simple option using the label extension, and we can override the labels from the base package. So let me show you that, how we can do that. So I have taken, for this, I have taken accounts receivable as an example. So let me just copy this name. So if I open this label file, so we have the standard labels. So now I want to override some of these standard labels on my extension package or add-on package. I'll go and add a new item here. Select the label and make sure you give the same name, whichever label file you want to extend. And at the end, suffix with the underscore extension. So click add. So that should add me a label file. I want to continue the same name. So here, if you want to choose more than one language, so you can do so. But in this case, I will continue with the ENUS. Click finish. So once the label file is created, Okay. So let me open that variable file, what I have just created now. So what I'll do, I mean, in this case, I have this variable. So like we have active, future, and expired. So for that expired text, I want to change it as maybe past. Okay. So now when I have this, and once I compile the application, compile and sync, so wherever this expired variable was showing before, with this add-on package installed, so you'll be seeing this text, I mean the text as past. So like this, you can create new labels, or even you can override the existing standard label. So apart from that, I mean, I have taken some real-time redesign scenarios. In some cases, you might not be able to use the standard extension framework options to extend some of your changes. So the other option what is left with you is go for redesign, if you could redesign without impacting the functionality. And in some cases, you also go for Microsoft request for any extension changes. So if your change is specific to your application and which may not be supported by Microsoft, in such cases, you have to go for redesign. So for this, I have just taken a few examples from our core ISV application. So the first one, what I have taken is invoice format, that is on the invoice contract. Let me take you to the application here. So if I go to the project contract, these are the project contracts. And this is an environment where we have some overlayering. If you scroll down here, so this is the invoice format field, which is a standard field. But on top of that, we have added an additional element, invoice grouping. So if you see this code within the application, so let me quickly open that form. So go to the code view. Okay, so this is the display method, I mean the edit method, which is there inside the data source. If you scroll up, so this is inside this project funding source. And there is no way, I mean, since it's inside the data source, there's no way I can do CoC for this or even the pre or post event handler. But we had to overlay that change. So now, rather than overlaying the change, what we have done is, let me go to the other application. Again, open same contract. So we have followed more or less a similar approach what Parmesh showed in his example, hiding a control. So we have hidden the control here, the invoice format, but we have a details button. When I click on this, so we have moved this control here, and this control again we have added an extension edit method within the table extension on this funding source table. And within that, we have moved all the edit method code which is there in the standard, and we have added our own changes. So now here, without any overlayering and without impacting the functionality, we have moved all the changes here. So this is a slight deviation from the existing functionality, but it's not breaking any functionality. It works as is. The other scenario is covering a grid using the display option. You are aware that the display option is not supported on form extension. If there are no events to support that, so rather than having that option with overlayering, so what you can do is, let me again show you with an existing form. We'll go to our ISV. I'll take one of the existing invoice proposals. So if I click on edit, so the requirement for us previously with what we had is whenever I change something on the transactions here within the invoice form, I mean invoice proposal form, I was covering this grid on the right side, wherein we are showing the total as the grouping of this transaction. So when I change something here, so previously this entire grid used to turn to a different color, But since we cannot do that without display option, and for that we don't have any events, so we have come up with a slightly different option wherein we are adding a text field at the top, and then we are showing the color with a different background color, so that it gives a more or less same indication to the user that you have changed something on the transaction. So you have to click on refresh to show your recalculate your totals on the right side grid here. Okay, so that is one of the design change what we have done. And apart from reports, you are aware if there are any report changes, so you cannot directly, there are no extension option for the standard report changes. So for that, you have to create your new reports, and then you can add your own changes into that. So in some cases, you can make use of the standard tables by using the extension framework. And also, if there are any changes on the DP clause, so you can use the pre or post event handler. Using that, you can make use of the standard object. But if there are any additional parameters which are there on the contract, that cannot be done. So you end up adding a new clause for that. So eventually, wherever required, you have to create new object, and then within your new report, you have to build that entire design, which you basically do by duplicating a standard report, which is again the common scenario, report changes. Okay, so let me just quickly get into the extension best practices, which are already covered. But yeah, as a best practice, if you are working on ongoing development within 2012 or D365, so you should avoid making certain changes, like avoid changing the signatures on the standard method. Even adding additional parameters, so you should avoid on the standard object. So avoid changing the signature of the methods or even the access specifiers. So if there is something, the standard method which is marked as private, so you should avoid changing them to public or protected. If there are any report changes if you want, so better go for a new report, so that if you are on 2012, if you are upgrading to D365, so without much an effort, so you can directly use those reports in D365. Also avoid changes on form level, and if there is any code functionality wise, so you should avoid adding bigger methods. So just see if you can split those bigger functions into smaller ones so that easily others can extend. Okay, so that's all from my side. So at this point of time, let me hand over to Jen. Jen, you can take over from here.
Great. Thanks, Syed. We hope this information has been helpful as you tackle moving overlayered code into the extension framework. We do have quite a few questions that have come in. We will reach out to you offline and help you with those as we can. And do feel free to reach out to myself, Jen W. at SAGlobal.com, or Paramish R at SAGlobal.com. If you need assistance or extra bandwidth for these tasks, we do offer services in this area, of course, under a variety of engagement models. And lastly, we've mentioned a few links and websites as we've had the presentation, so we'll just show these here, and they'll be in the recording, of course. If you need to check that extensibility website, there's also a link to another webinar that we have. Paramish, could you advance or Syed, could you advance the slide to the last slide there? Great, thanks. So here's some of those links. Check the extensibility homepage for the status on what's coming and how to log those in LCS as Microsoft releases that functionality roadmap. And again, we hope this has been helpful. Back to you, Jason, for any closing comments.
All right, thank you. Great job, team. And that concludes today's event. There's a brief survey that'll show up after you leave today. Any feedback you can provide is appreciated. With that, we will conclude today's event. Have a great day, everybody.